How do you locate and avoid the many sharks who are out there preying on artists?
So, how do you locate and avoid sharks when it comes to producers? There are a few red flags that I recommend that you look for first. One is extremely high pricing. If somebody tells you they want you to pay them $5,000 to produce one song, you probably want to look elsewhere because there are many, many people who can do it for significantly less with the same high quality musicians and what have you. And it's not all about price at that point. That's the first thing. The next thing is there are lots of different terms that people use, but the bottom line of it is producers who want to take your publishing. And we could do an entire, probably hour discussion about what that means. But your publishing, your rights to your songs that you've created, is an asset, is a value. And if you did all the creating of the songs and you don't have a publisher who normally would take 50% of the entire income from publishing royalties of the song, you get the other 50%. If a producer says, sure, I'll produce your project and I want your publishing, which means they want the publisher's share of your royalties. The question then would be why? If they're not actually serving the role of a publisher and pitching and placing your music in as many possible scenarios as possible, then they are not your publisher and they don't deserve your publishing. What a lot of producers will try to do, shady producers, is take co-writing credit for your songs when they don't really do any writing on your songs. If they change a word or two here, in a couple of lines in the song, or they change a 1 chord to a 6 minor chord because it has a little bit better sound against the vocal melody, that is not songwriting. The melody and the words of the song are the song. To some extent, maybe some musical riffs and chord structures are part of the song. But if they don't significantly change any of that stuff, they are not co-writing. And they don't deserve any of your publishing as a result of that. Another thing, unfortunately, we do have this in Nashville, I hate to admit, but there are some people who love to talk big name players. Oh, I've got the drummer for such and such, a big touring act that I can get you for a price. Or I've got the drummer for, or the bass player for so-and-so who's had 10 hit records and all this kind of stuff. If you're in a place like Nashville, virtually everybody has those kind of credits. All of the core session musician type people who work in this town, they all have bragging rights. They all have credits. I mean, some of them could literally not stop talking for a solid week, just listing the credits that they've had. But what you'll find interesting is most of them don't talk about that stuff. It doesn't even come up unless you ask them. And then after the session's over, they happen to mention that they played for and worked with X, Y, and Z, and you're like, holy crap, really? And then you get into a really good discussion. But if somebody's trying to offer their services as a producer or a producer engineer and says, oh yeah, I got all these big players, they're all A-list, triple A, triple scale type people. In Nashville, we just all kind of yawn over that because that's completely the norm. So that should not be A, the reason that you choose the producer, and B, the reason that you pay exorbitant amounts of money for your project. Those really, really great A-list players will charge very, very reasonable rates for what they do, just like the other people do. Be really, really careful for the pricing structure that they have. I offer most of my stuff on a per song basis. So if you want to produce a song, that's the price. If you want me to mix a song that you've recorded, that's the price per song. If you want me to master a song that you've mixed, it's that much per song. It's not by the hour. And the other thing to really look for is nickel and dimers who, you wanted me to master your song, but if you want me to put it on a CD for you, that's an extra $25, whatever the case may be. There will be all these surcharges kind of sprinkled within their price list, or not at all, that kind of come up and you end up paying, 25% or 30% more for your project than you had thought you would in the first place. I do things by the drink. by the song and by the project, and that's because I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I know what it's going to cost. I can tell you ahead of time the range for the musicians that you're going to need and what have you. So even if the producer gives you a price range for things, that's much, much better than saying, oh, I'm going to charge by the hour and kind of see how it takes. And it might be triple the price depending on who I can get to play guitar and that kind of thing. You don't want to go there with them. Simple pricing so that they know what they're getting and you know what you're paying is definitely the way to go. And I guess the very last thing I would say about looking out for sharks is people who claim they can do any kind of song in any genre for you. So, oh, you want to do traditional country? I can do traditional country. You want to do hip hop? I can do hip hop. You want to do classic rock? I can do classic rock. You want to do modern pop? You want to sound like Katy Perry? I can do that too. Most producers specialize in genres that they're really, really good at, have worked on a lot, and have a reputation for. And if you are an artist who is looking for neo soul, do you really care if they do bluegrass? Probably not. So if they're trying to sell you on, I can do any style, I just need your money and you pay me to be your producer, they're not putting the priorities in the right order. They might have worked in a lot of styles. I mean, I've been at it for decades, so I've worked in a lot of different styles, but there are definitely styles that I don't do. And I tell potential clients right up front, nope, you know what? I'd like to recommend so-and-so for that project because I think they'd be a better fit for you. Usually if they say they'll do any kind of style, that they're more interested in your money and they're acting out of desperation than experience.
Should an artist and a producer have a written agreement or a contract?
It kind of depends on where you are and what your relationship with them is. I work in Nashville. There are surprisingly few written contracts on most projects. It's very much a reputation-based town. And so over the years, I've worked with hundreds of clients, thousands of songs, and I've probably done maybe a dozen, 15 actual contracts before with anyone I've ever worked with. Now, having said that, what I do like to do, if that is a necessity for a project, and sometimes it is, I like to do an informal letter of agreement. So instead of a big legalese thing that's 50 pages long, it says, where to the parties undersigned here in, and all this stuff that nobody can understand. I like to say, this is an informal letter of agreement between myself, Fett, producer, engineer, and client name, songwriter, artist, whatever the case may be. And basically what I do is I outline in there what the expectations are of both of us. So here's what the client will be required to provide / show up for, be ready for. And here's what I will show up for and be ready for and provide. And it's all in plain English. It's 2-3 pages. And that should be enough. And it's legally binding. That should be enough for both parties to feel very, very comfortable. I've had people who hired a lawyer and paid a lot of money and brought me a production contract that's 15, 20, 30 pages long and all this kind of stuff. And it's designed to protect them from me doing things like trying to take their publishing and stuff, which I totally understand. But all of that can be put very, very easily in a letter of agreement. And I put that in my letter of agreement. One of the most important things that you do want to include in any relationship you have, whether it's a formal letter of agreement as well, is the whole notion of work for hire. If you work particularly in the sync, the film and TV world, the music supervisor, music library, music editor, whoever happens to be the consumer of your music on a particular project, will not even consider using your music unless everyone who participated in that recording has signed a work for hire agreement. And what that means is that person was hired one time for that one purpose on that one song to do a specific job and was paid a specific amount. They have no claims at all to any future income from that song. The reason for that is if somebody uh, writes a song, records a song, has a bunch of people play on it, and then somebody falsely decides later on to bring some kind of a lawsuit or whatever. Hey, I sang backing vocals on that song, and now it's in an ad for Pepsi, and I want my whatever percent as a backing vocalist that I would normally get from AFTRA, blah 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 blah. And man, they're gonna go after the person using the song, not you. And it's going to cost them a ton of money and get them into a lot of really bad legal battles. So if you're doing a film and TV project specifically, but I recommend this for anything because you never know when you're going to use your songs for that purpose, everybody signs a letter of agreement, or rather a work for hire contract. And it's less than a page. It's very, very simple, plain English. I have a template that I give my clients when they don't have their own. And it just keeps everybody covered. Now, having said that, I pay good rates for my musicians, and they get paid if they're willing to sign a work for hire form. Then they can work with me. If they're not, they can certainly work somewhere else. But I expect myself and the client to pay them a really good rate for that. So as far as contracts go, that's the one that you always want to have, especially for film and TV sync stuff. You've got to have a work for hire signed form from everyone.
Does that prevent you from using union musicians?
That's a gray area right now. Fortunately, the union in Nashville is a very active one, and it's run by Dave Pomeroy, who is a really, really good, upstanding, not only musician, but also person. And he has worked tirelessly for many years now to allow musicians to work under very, very different circumstances than they could before. If this was 10 years ago, you could not sign a work for hire form as a union musician. The two were completely mutually exclusive. Now there's ways that musicians can do work for hire stuff. They can work from their own studio and do parts for people remotely and all that kind of stuff. None of that structure existed in the union before. So it's moving definitely in a positive direction, mostly because of Dave Pomeroy, and he's had a lot of influence nationally and internationally on musicians' unions to make those situations much more tenable. But you'd be surprised that outside of major music centers like New York and LA and Nashville, 90% or more of the musicians aren't in a union. So it's not an issue for them. They've chosen specifically to work as independent, people, and they don't either need or want to be in the union, and that issue won't come up for you. The great thing about Tennessee and Nashville is it's a work for hire state. So if somebody does not want to be in the union and wants to work with me, and I have many, many people like that, and wants to be able to sign work for hire agreements and stuff like that, they can do that. They're not breaking any laws or anything like that. So the industry and the union are moving ahead now and realizing it's a very, very different world we work in, and it's getting better all the time.